Hey y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. What happens when we die? From Angel Studios, the force behind Sound of Freedom and The Chosen, comes an unprecedented deep dive into the phenomena of near-death experiences in the new movie, After Death. After Death makes a courageous venture into a hotly debated, mysterious subject by comparing near-death experience with cutting-edge scientific knowledge. Hear from experts in the fields of science, philosophy, and medicine, as well as firsthand experiences of people who have lived through death as they paint a fascinating picture of life in the next realm. This groundbreaking project responds to the soul's innate desire to find meaning in life and solace in the future. Come see it for yourself or pay it forward by providing a free ticket for others to see the film. Leave your preconceptions at the door and prepare for a never-before-seen glimpse into what the next life could entail in After Death, opening October 27th. Get your tickets today or pay it forward at angel.com/3martini lunch. That's angel.com/3 martini lunch. After Death, the end is only the beginning. Rated PG-13.
Welcome to the 3 Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the 3 Martini Lunch. Thanks to Chad Benson for filling in for me on Friday. I had the honor, as I do each year around this time, to be interviewing American heroes at the American Veterans Center Conference for 3 full days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I will talk a little bit more about that later in the podcast. But thanks to Chad for filling in, and Jim, of course, for providing your excellent analysis as always. But let's start with our good martini today, which is a little bit complicated. But from a Biden's in trouble perspective politically, it's good news. It's really good news because the New York Times has a new poll out on key swing states and where things stand right now. And so in Nevada, which seems way too good, but has Trump up 10. It says 52-41, but I'm guessing if you go into the decimal points, it's a little bit closer the other way. But still, 10% for a Republican in Nevada is eye-popping. It's Trump +6 in Georgia, +5 in Michigan, +5 in Arizona, +4 in Pennsylvania, and Biden +2 in Wisconsin. So based on that, if those numbers are accurate, and those are the 2 nominees, as of right now, Donald Trump would be doing pretty well in the Electoral College. Obviously a long way to go, but for those on the left who don't want Biden to be the nominee, it has had its desired effect. You've got Bill Kristol, who has previously called for Joe Biden to step aside and let somebody else be the nominee. He's shouting this from the rooftops. You got other people very, very nervous about this. I saw Larry Sabato telling people to breathe into a paper bag because we're nowhere near Election Day yet. He's very anti-Trump at this point. David Axelrod, of course, one of the political strategists that helped Barack Obama rise to fame. We'll talk about him a little bit later, too. He says it's very late to change horses. A lot will happen in the next year that no one can predict. And Biden's team says his resolve to run is firm. He's defied conventional wisdom before, but this will send tremors of doubt through the party. Not bedwetting, but legitimate concern. And then later on in the thread, he says, only President Biden can make this decision. But the clear sentiment in the thread is, it's time for you to go, sir. So, Jim, it's bad news for Biden. It's probably great news for Trump, given the fact that his rivals for the nomination have suggested he's unelectable, and that means it's bad news for the rivals. So what's your big takeaway here?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, Axelrod says only Biden can make this decision. But the rest of the party can shove him in a certain direction, can't they? Look, it's hard to overstate the degree of panic that this poll sent through Democratic circles over on Sunday. Siena actually overstated Biden back in the 2020 cycle, indicated that Biden had a shot at winning Florida, and Trump won. And so there are some people said, oh, this is Siena trying to overcompensate. The thing is that this is kind of in line with everything else. Remember that it wasn't that long ago that the post-ABC poll had Biden trailing Trump by 10. And immediately this is an outlier, this is an outlier. Well, and the other argument when you see a national poll showing Biden and Trump close, that Biden defenders will say is, look, we don't have a national popular vote, we have an electoral college. Well, this one was in 6 swing states. And It wasn't just, I mean, like, some of them were close, and Biden was hanging on in Wisconsin, but trailing 5 out of 6 is bad. Trailing by 10 in Nevada is one of those eye-popping things. And this doesn't feel that wrong to me. And the reason I don't think this feels that wrong is you look at every other number and every other poll, Biden is unpopular right now. He does not have a high job approval rating. People feel like the country is on the wrong track. People feel bad about the economy. People feel bad about the border. People feel bad about the state of the world. So all of this stuff jumbled together points to a very unpopular incumbent. Now, this does not mean that Donald Trump is popular. But right now, people are like, you know what? Give me the other guy. I'll roll the dice on him. I remember enjoying the economy before the pandemic. I'll hope for that again, rather than stick with this. And oh, by the way, both of these guys are old, but Biden is older, and Biden shows it more. And it's been fascinating, like for going back to the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. I remember making this argument that Biden was not in front of the cameras very much, and he was not maintaining. We know he doesn't do interviews. All these reasons, people who are on this podcast are probably tired of me listening to me, lay out this litany of indicators that Biden is really too old for the job, and that he can't do the job of the presidency the way a president traditionally does. Well, he's only going to get older, right? Whatever state he turns 81 this month, I think in about 2 weeks. When he's 81 and a half, he's probably going to be in even worse shape. When he's 82, or knocking on the door of 82 on Election Day 2024, he's probably going to be in really rough shape. So there's no reason to think this aspect of the weakness in his public image and his public perception is going to get any better. You have to hope for the Middle East solves itself in the next year. You have to hope that the border crisis just goes away. I guess the idea is that Mexico and Central America just run out of people in the next 12 months or so. You have to hope that the economy will not. It's not just the economy will rebound. That people's prices will at some point decline, or Americans will get fined with prices. Oh, by the way, have you filled up your tank lately? This is like 3 something This is November. This is traditionally not the high demand season. And yet somehow you're paying well north of $3 a gallon. People feel that, right? People see it at the grocery store. It's just indicator after indicator. And Biden chose to run on Bidenomics. It would be as if he had chose to run on youthful vigor. This is like one of the weakest parts of his record, a really very weak record as president. So, yeah, even if you want to quibble with one number here or one number there or all that kind of stuff. And oh, by the way, looks really bad when Joe Biden is trailing 5 out of 6 swing states. Head-to-head, Trump versus Kamala Harris, Trump's winning all 6. He's actually ahead in Wisconsin, only by a percentage point. I think it's safe to say that all 6 of these swing states are probably going to be close when all is said and done next year. That's what the nature of swing states. You usually don't see one candidate or the other winning in a blowout. That's what makes them swing states. But if you win one of them, if you win the state by 1 vote, you get all the electoral college votes, other than Maine and Nebraska. And so that means if you win Nevada by half a percentage point, hey, guess what? You get all those electoral votes. Same thing for every one of those swing states. So Democrats should be panicking, and they should be considering whether they really want to go head-to-head against Donald Trump. Because the last couple of years have made a lot of people, they may not like Donald Trump, but they like some of the results he's getting. And they told this pollster that Biden's policies are hurting them. That's going to be a really tough thing to overcome between now and November. But I guess we'll see, Greg.
We will see. And we might get a little bit of a glimmer tomorrow in some of these Virginia races. Without the statewide offices being on the ballot, it's less clear. But usually some results in Virginia can sometimes be reflective of what they think of Washington, because national news is local news. So if the Democrats hold on, it could be because they're screeching about abortion on every single ad, or it could be because it's just gotten so blue up here that it doesn't really matter what's happening across the river. But Jim, I'm going to extrapolate my Dianne Feinstein theory. When we're talking about all those times where she's not fit for the job anymore, she can't do it anymore, she should step aside, let somebody else do it. And my counter argument to that was, well, if she's not there and she's slightly less radical than anyone who would replace her when she is there, maybe we just let it ride. So in this situation, you're not going to get a Democratic nominee who's any better than Biden on policy, but they might be a stronger candidate. So as Republicans, as conservatives, do we want Biden to be the nominee because he's probably the most beatable?
That is, you could imagine a scenario where there's almost like this domino effect in which the Democrats, in a panic, suddenly realize, oh my God, we can't go with Biden. He's just too old. He's just too weak. Americans are not impressed with the results he's got. And they, I guess conceivably they could nominate Kamala Harris, but the numbers aren't any better for her. So they, somehow, presto changeo, managed to put together Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer, your favorite, at two generic Democrats. And all of a sudden, they don't look as weak as Biden does. And all of a sudden, the Republicans who, have been saying, of course we can nominate Donald Trump. Biden's a very weak incumbent. Trump's going to win. Look at these numbers. Well, now all of a sudden, maybe it's not so clear. Maybe all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom or whoever this other generic Democrat is suddenly don't have all the baggage that Biden has. And they can invigorate young voters. They can invigorate minority voters. And all these groups that are really important to the Democrats who really went with him because he wasn't Trump in the general election. Maybe all of a sudden the Republicans start saying, oh, this doesn't look like such a slam dunk after all. Maybe we don't want to nominate Trump. I think most Trump supporters are going to stay on his bandwagon until the day he dies. But you could see a scenario in which the calculus of Republicans, the calculations of who has the best odds of beating the Democrat, suddenly change if Biden is not the nominee.
No, that's definitely true. I think if Gavin Newsom ditches the debate at the end of this month with DeSantis, that could be a clue that he has grander plans than just an appearance on Fox News with Ron DeSantis. His trips to China and Israel are clear signs that he's trying to position himself as a national political figure. And of course, you always have the rumblings that Michelle Obama reluctantly might come in if the party desperately needs her because they think Biden's going down the tube. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. The shoving is going to get harder after this. But like Axelrod also said, it's late. It's late to do all this. And so without cooperation from Biden, it's going to get ugly publicly. And they certainly don't want that either. But anyway, it's good to know we're not the only party that can't get its act together. So.
Hey, y'all. This is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. Superbeets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure and promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Superbeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And believe me, I know because I'm traveling all over the country covering stories and frankly, sometimes all over the world. And it's so easy. I just keep my Superbeets in my handbag, in my pocket, wherever. And I've got amazing energy. And guess what? They taste really good. So supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus. Superbeets Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, you also get a productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Superbeet Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Superbeet Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sarah. That's S-A-R-A. Getsuperbeets.com, code Sarah to get 15% off your first order. Getsuperbeets.com, promo code Sarah.
All right, Jim, speaking of the Obamas, our former president, number 44 was on the Pod Save America podcast, which is hosted by a couple of his old communication folks. And so the issue, of course, of the situation in the Middle East came up, and in true Obama fashion, he did not disappoint in disappointing us. He decided it's everybody's fault, man. We're all complicit in this. This is a really long clip here. It's almost 2 minutes, so please don't leave. I will tell you that I tried to shorten it because Mike Pence would be jealous of Obama's dramatic pauses here. This was originally over 2 minutes. I cut 23 seconds out of it of just Obama's dramatic pauses in 2 minutes. So anyway, here's him playing both sides as I'm on the Middle East.
If there's any chance of us being able to act constructively to do something, it will require an admission of complexity and maintaining what on the surface may seem contradictory ideas. That what Hamas did was horrific and there's no justification for it. And what is also true is that the occupation and what's happening to Palestinians is unbearable. And what is also true is that there is a history of the Jewish people that may be dismissed unless your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your uncle or your aunt tell you stories about the madness of anti-Semitism. And what is true is that there are people right now who are dying who have nothing to do with what Hamas did. And what is true, right? I mean, we can go on for a while. And the problem with the social media and trying to TikTok activism and trying to debate this on that is you can't speak the truth. You can pretend to speak the truth. You can speak one side of the truth. And in some cases, you can try to maintain your moral innocence, but that won't solve the problem. And so if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean, that all of us are complicit to some degree.
We're all complicit to some degree. Jim, you did a whole morning jolt on this today, so I'll toss it to you in a moment. But the first things that jump out at me at that are the only applause in his remarks are in defense of the Palestinian situation when he calls it an occupation, which Gaza has not had any Israeli occupation since 2005. We remember Obama's 8 years in office, where he treated Benjamin Netanyahu like a pariah and I think stormed off and left him in the dining room so he could go eat dinner at one point. And then this whole idea that everybody's complicit. I mean, just because you failed, like every other president has generally failed in the Middle East, doesn't mean that the rest of us who are going about our lives bear responsibility for this, sir. He spent the rest of that comment going on about hemming and hawing about what he could have done differently, but more importantly, now it's important to look at the future. So, Jim, what were your big takeaways?
I'm going to vent my spleen for a bit. If you want the full thing, read the Morning Jolt. First of all, I guess I'll begin by saying that there are bits and pieces of this somewhat meandering monologue that I think are easily defensible. You see the shot at TikTok activism. The chunks of this monologue are calls for empathy, which I don't think is a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. But stuck in the middle of it is this really blanket blame of literally everyone. Quote, if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth, and then you have to admit nobody's hands are clean. Now, when we've seen Hamas terrorists showcasing all the blood on their hands, that's a really poor word choice. All of us are complicit to some degree. Horsepucky, and I'm only cleaning up my language because it's important to Greg, that, no, we're not. What the hell did you do? What the hell did it do? Listeners, me, you? None of us are complicit in what Hamas did. None of us are complicit in the Israeli response. If we say, hey, Bibi, you should take it easy on him, Bibi's not going to listen to us. If we said, Hamas, you really should not run around killing toddlers, Hamas is not going to listen to us. We have zero control over this situation. And it is kind of this implicit arrogance, that the idea that all world events are somehow an inevitable result of bad policy choices by the United States. Hey, you know what? As I lay out here, Israel's existed for 75 years, and much of the Arab world, and in particular the Palestinians, have been attempting to destroy Israel, or at least terrorist groups acting in the name of the Palestinians have been attempting to destroy Israel for almost the entirety of that 75 years. Sometimes they have quiet years, sometimes they have much worse years, sometimes they have declared wars. But all of us were born into this conflict. The moment we became cognizant of world events, it was still going on. So you can't really begrudge all of us, But then the thing about it, if you want to say anybody in America has some blame for this situation, well, I kind of feel like it would go with the guy who's sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office for 8 years, rather than all Americans. And the other thing is that why was Hamas able to launch this massive attack? Well, they got a lot of support from Iran. Why was Iran able to give so much support to Hamas? Well, we took off a whole bunch of sanctions. We really pursued that Iran deal. We let them have a lot more oil revenue. We let them unfroze a bunch of funds over the years. The Iranian economy is in stronger shape now than it was back when the U.S. was trying to squeeze it with sanctions. And both under Bush and both under Trump, we had a policy of trying to enact as many sanctions as possible and to choke off trade and to force the Iranians to the bargaining table and to make them begging for release on those sanctions. And from that leverage, we would get them to stop being the world's preeminent state sponsor of terrorism. And the attitude of both the Obama presidency and its administration and the Biden presidency and its administration is we just try hard enough, we can make the Iranians be reasonable. Well, guess what? The Iranians will not be reasonable. So this really stuck in my craw. This really kind of got to me, this idea that the other thing is if you read Obama's post-presidency memoir, Volume 1, I would emphasize. He's still working on Volume 2. The contempt for Netanyahu comes through on every reference, every page. And Obama puts it out pretty plainly that in his eyes, Israel is the stronger of the two parties. And therefore, it was obligated to, quote, in his mind, it was reasonable to ask the stronger party to take the bigger first step in the direction of peace. That means making some sort of unilateral concession. Well, you hear that, and it's very easy to understand why not just Bibi Netanyahu, but most Israeli leaders did not, want to go along with this because they basically did not see themselves as the stronger of the two parties. Now, on paper, Israel is stronger than Hamas, no doubt about that. But as we all know, Hamas, as we just saw last month, Hamas can inflict a lot of damage on the Israelis. And oh, by the way, Hamas doesn't act alone. As we mentioned earlier, there's a considerable amount of support from Iran, which, oh, by the way, is pursuing a nuclear weapon. And also there's Palestinian Islamic Jihad operating in the Gaza Strip. And there's Hezbollah operating up in Lebanon. And there's Bashar Assad over in Syria. They've been shelling over in Israel's direction. Nobody really, that got very little discussion in the midst of all this. So you add up all of Israel's enemies that surround it. And the countries where you've got, like Egypt and Jordan have peace treaties with Israel, but it's not like the populations of Egypt or Jordan are particularly pro-Israeli by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they still denounce Israel as furiously as anybody else. Add all that up, and Israel doesn't look like the stronger of the two sides. And it becomes very clear to see why they would not be so eager to make a concrete concession to begin the peace process based on promises of better behavior from the Palestinians and their allies. And it's kind of amazing that Obama, who's tells us how smart he is, couldn't grasp that. And just as he handled in his negotiations with Republicans, apparently he kept telling the Israelis, I know your long-term interests better than you do. The sheer arrogance of this, the sheer hubris of this. But that's where we are. And that's, the other last thing I would just say is when he says, nobody's hands are clean, it's an implication that nobody's innocent. Well, you've got people in this country right now who, to our national shame, believe that what's going on in the Middle East is an excuse to harass Jews. They're spray painting outside Jewish schools. They're calling in bomb threats. They're harassing Jewish people on the street. And all of these people have that. I'm not saying Obama wants this to happen. I'm just going to observe. Obama has this mentality that they have this of nobody being innocent. And these folks walking down the street being jerks and harassing people have that same attitude. Nobody's innocent. If I'm mad at Israel, I can take it out on any Jew I see because none of them are innocent. Now, I think I'd argue a whole bunch of those people who got taken hostage, a whole bunch of the people who got slaughtered by Hamas were innocent. They had nothing to deal with any of this. They were no threat to anybody in Palestine. They're out, partying at some rock concert. What threat were they? Obama has always seen the Middle East differently, not just from the average American, but I think even from the average Democrat. And it comes through in comments like this, and I just, it's so Obama to have been relatively quiet. Somebody disputed my assertion of this in the Morning Jolt. I would say that compared to, Obama may be, quietly talking to everybody in the Biden administration, but Obama doesn't really jump up on stage and usually say things like this all that often. And at this exact moment, he felt the need to say, hey, nobody's innocent. Everybody's got blood on their hands. To heck with you, Mr. President, and that's the gentlest way I can put that.
Yeah, I mean, he's flailing here. He's basically admitting that his Middle East policy was a failure, and there's many reasons it is a failure. You documented very well the situation with Iran. We had him basically choked out economically. He let him off the hook and put him on a slower path to a nuclear weapon, certainly not cutting off the path to a nuclear weapon. And now both he and Biden have released billions and billions of dollars. Also, I might point out that Barack Obama did come up at one point with a Middle East peace plan that involved going to pre-1967 borders. Talk about your absolute non-starter. I don't know if that was the bigger first step that he was asking to give up the Golan Heights and, areas that protect your national security. But the idea that this guy is an even-handed player is ridiculous. He was hostile towards Israel from day one. There's a reason that Nothing got done, and so now he's trying to pretend that everybody's at fault. All right, let's talk about something way better than Barack Obama, who we do not miss, ever. 4Patriots, our great sponsor for today. And when things go sideways, the question is, will you be ready for that? Some people, they're concerned they might have to go a long time without electricity, but that's not the case. If you have the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, you can charge those critical appliances, your fridge, your freezer, medical devices, and a whole lot more. And now we've got the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, which charges more devices for longer in a blackout, has double the capacity, plus new expandable capability for even more power. It's great if you have a blackout or if you just want to take it camping. It's fume-free, silent, and safe. Comes with a solar panel. You never have to pay for fuel to make this thing work. So visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And as I mentioned, from Thursday through Saturday night, I was at the American Veterans Center Conference in Northwest Washington. And what I didn't know until yesterday, because I was so immersed in the conference, was that there was this massive pro-Palestinian, some might say pro-Hamas protest swarming in downtown Washington, D.C. So, Jim, literally at the time, I was talking to a World War II veteran who was describing the liberation of Dachau concentration camp that he was part of. These people are marching through the streets. And one of the people cheering them on, of course, and who also cheered them on at the Capitol a number of weeks back, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, who's made absolutely no secret of her position on this issue. She tweeted out, though, on Friday about one of the phrases we keep talking about. And that's, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, in between is Israel. They expect all of that to be Palestinian, and that means Israel will no longer exist. But she doesn't see it that way, at least publicly. She's trying to gaslight us here. She says, from the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence. Not death, destruction, or hate. My work and advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity. Jim, I know it's going to be even harder to go beyond horse pucky for that one, but what do you make of her trying to completely steer the American people into a smokescreen there?
You know, Greg, it is really, really challenging to not use bad words on this podcast when the topics are like this. It just jumps on my last nerve here. Because here's the thing. I'd really love to ask all of those people chanting it, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. All right, what happens to the Israelis in this vision you have? Where do they go? Because we've seen how Hamas wants to deal with them. Hamas wants to kill them all, right? In your vision, do the Israelis get some other compensatory homeland? Do we pick some other stretch of land, some other continent, some other part of the Middle East? Okay, now you get to go here, and we recognize your right to exist there? Because Hamas very clearly has said, Jews do not have the right to exist, and we will wipe them out. That's their perspective. Now, maybe it's not your perspective, but at minimum, you're arguing for the same thing that Hamas says that it wants, and you're being very vague about how we get there. You talk about the destination, you don't talk anything about the route. I'd love to say, because the other thing is, like, does everybody in Israel just decide to move away voluntarily? Because that's never going to happen, pal. Like there's this childlike naivete that somehow we can reach this point where everybody in Palestine gets to live, all the Palestinians get to live where they want, and the Israelis just get beamed up to the Enterprise? I don't know what their vision is, but it's certainly, in their vision, the Israelis aren't there. It could be because they're not there because they moved somewhere else, or it could be not there because we've had a second Holocaust and they're all dead. And the fact, if it's not if it's not an explicitly pro-genocide chant, it certainly leaves the door open to genocide. And I'd really say, if you want to say, why are you accusing me of supporting genocide? Find a different chant. Find something that more clearly explains. And here's the other problem. In this Rashida Tlaib video she put out, she has footage of protesters in Ohio who are chanting, "No peace on stolen land." Now, I have a very hard time believing "From the river to the sea" is a call for peaceful coexistence. But I'll tell you, no peace on stolen land is not a call for peaceful coexistence, because you just said no peace. It's right there. Right? This is not just gaslighting, to use the common term for blatantly lying to people and trying to get them to doubt what they know. This is like gaslighting, holding the lantern up and adjusting the light on it in front of us. We can see what you're doing. Rashida Tlaib is showcasing people chanting no peace on stolen land and then insisting she stands for peace. Again, horsepucky. So we're talking about somebody who's just utterly unhinged. And so never mind Republicans. It should be House Democrats who are rushing to censure her. But no, we can't do that. We can't do that. That's, we have to stand up for her right to free speech from the same people who basically believe you should fire your job if you shared something from Aunt Edna on Facebook.
Well, she is proving to be a pretty useful foil for some in the Democratic Party. For example, Alyssa Slotkin, her Michigan House colleague who's running for Senate, doesn't want to be anywhere near comments of Tlaib, defending some of these incendiary chants going on in the streets. So she's asking Tlaib to retract and apologize, and that probably won't happen, but she's trying to create distance with someone she's been pretty friendly with in the past. So we'll see how this all unfolds. Jim, good to be back with you. See you again tomorrow, and don't forget to vote.
See you tomorrow, Greg. And yes, everyone out there in one of those states that's holding elections, go vote.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell some friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They really do help us. Get us also on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Monday and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.